Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the live stream. I'm Joshua Koyapalai,
And I'm Josiah Koipalai.
and today we're working on comics and discussing character creation. And we're going to talk about like coming up with characters, and like we're going to talk a little bit about the designing characters.
And while we do that, you're going to be coloring a page from the comic, right?
Yeah. And so this is the project we're working on is called Caden and the Yak Thieves, and it's a story about some Mongol yak herdsmen in the Mongol Empire, and about their struggle against yak thieves. And so now I'm gonna switch over to the page that we're working on, and you can maybe you could talk about what we're starting to what part of the story we're on.
Okay. Oh, and also, we should mention that
Oh,
you
yeah,
can
so-
sign up for the newsletter.
Oh yeah,
That's
also
a great way to.
yeah, make sure to, if you want to
Stay in
follow
touch.
along with the project that we're working on, go to the link in the description box below, and there's a place where you can sign up for our newsletter at our website. So now I'll go over to my drawing program, and I'm using a tablet and a digital pen on my tablet to draw. So what's happening right now in the story?
Well, the boys have just realized that the men at the camp are not rustlers; they're just merchants,
Mhm.
and now they're leaving.
Yeah. So they
to
they
look for the
raided
rustlers.
this merchant camp
Yeah.
because they thought they had their yaks, but then they found out it was just they had furs, and they thought it was their yak furs. But these merchants were just selling like
Fox and ermine and reindeer fur, other animals, not yaks.
So this is the page that I'm going to be coloring while we discuss character creation. And so I started coloring some of it already.
Right, just
And
to get the colors in the page,
Mhm.
so you can know what to
yeah.
draw.
So
Oh, you can
and
read it.
I'm going to start out by reading the page, just so we get introduced to what's happening. So Batar says, "Thanks, you've been a big help. Oh, and hire a guard. We could have robbed you blind." And the merchant says, "Perhaps we could hire you." And probably one thing you should know about Batar is in this story, he really wants to travel the world, and he's kind of bored of his life on the just taking care of yaks, and wants more excitement. And so, but anyways, so he said, then the merchant says, "You would be amply compensated. How would you like to travel the world?"
And Batar freezes. Right, stops
Yeah.
in place. Stops in his tracks.
And Caden, who's always trying to convince Batar that this life is the best life, raising yaks, his brother Caden says, "Uh-oh, they've got him now." And then the merchant continues, "See the great city of..."
Samarkand.
What is it?
Samarkand.
"The busy streets, the bustling markets, the bazaars. Ah, prittle prattle," Caden says. The merchant continues, "The smell of cardamom and saffron in the air." And then Oobleck chimes in, and he likes food, and he's very into culinary stuff. And he says, "Do you by any chance need 2 guards? I'm running low on saffron." And then Caden is here. He's angry. So yeah, but so this page will kind of help us discuss what what we want to talk about, which is personalities and coming up with characters and like making them distinct and like what their motivations are, because all the characters in this page have these different motivations and things that they're the stuff that they're talking about here kind of shows their personalities. So
should I read the comments? The two
Oh,
comments
yeah.
left? Okay. So Samuel Svensson says, "Hello, everybody." Hello,
hi, Samuel. Thanks for
And
joining the live stream.
He says Samuel Svensson is in the house. 3
Nice.
points. That's good.
Yeah, make sure to, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments section. I'm gonna jump into coloring this page, and
So first you gotta lay down like a background layer, right?
yeah,
So
I'm gonna try to go as fast as possible.
yeah, do you think you could do the whole page?
We'll
Sam,
see.
you were talking about that. Are we gonna be able to do the whole page or not? So
Why don't we start talking about
character
creation?
creating characters, right? So for when I design characters, I just kind of base them around people I know.
Mm.
So all these characters are like people I know personally.
Hmm.
And I'm not going to tell who they are because they'd feel, I don't want to give away my secret, right? But yeah, they're really just people. Why do I not want to tell?
No. Why does that help? Why does it help to base them off of people you know?
I don't know. These are the most interesting people I know. I mean, and just how do you observe human interaction without just? I mean, that's where I get human interaction from. I observe it from people I know. And family and friends. Of course, if you want to make a character who's like a king or some extreme personality, a bad guy, a villain, a crazy person, I don't really know anyone like that. I don't know someone who's like a king, who's egotistic enough to be a king or a general or some other kind of leader.
I should mention that I have these presets or these things that I have here on the side, this little box here that has my colors that I have that I've already been using for the characters, and so I'm just picking up things from there and using it on the characters.
Right. So to make characters like that, I kind of like to base them around movie actors.
To make characters that you can't base off of personal.
Yeah, who have behavior traits that you don't see in people every day, right? I mean,
like you don't know any villains personally.
No, right? I don't know any people who are like that, who have the skill sets of a great king or a general, or who are crazy enough to do that kind of job, right? Because you really have to be pretty crazy to do something, to be a leader like that, a king or a president or something like that. You were talking about when you make characters, you think of it in a whole different kind of way, right? You start with you draw something and then you think, what's this person's backstory, right?
Well, that's one of the ways that a lot of artists come up with their characters. I mean, instead of like, so we're gonna talk about like the different starting points for
right. Yeah.
So what are some of the different ones? Like, one way that a lot of artists do is that they just have a sketchbook and they're just drawing different faces and different people, and they come up with
That's
a
neat
character,
way, I'll admit.
and they just think of where does this character come from and what's the story, and that's one way that characters might start being created.
Yeah. I think the simplest way is plot device. You need a character to do something. Like, you think about the comics like Tintin. The Thompsons just came from, they needed some policemen who want to arrest Tintin on some false charges, and the comedy of them trying to catch him while he's trying to actually catch the real bad guys. And instead of just making it a simple police character that's boring, since they're going to be throughout the whole comic, he made it a really interesting set of characters. They look identical and they're clumsy. So that's a good way, actually, because then you you need the you if you're gonna if you need a certain character to do something, you might as well invest the energy into making it an interesting character if they're going to be in the story.
Yeah.
You might as well give them a personality and a backstory and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
The other way is when you have a sort of a archetype of a character you want to have, you know, like a king or
Well,
a
I
great
guess,
leader.
I guess you would say like there's certain settings of stories. So like
Right.
this is kind of a like I don't know if this story like Caden and the Yak Thieves is kind of a new category of
Uh-huh.
you know like
Yeah.
it's I guess what it's similar to is cowboys
Yeah.
because it has like the rustlers and it has the people who are taking care of the herd, but there are different stories, you know, like frameworks that like a fantasy story that has like a kingdom,
Right.
then it has certain you know roles that need to be filled, like the king.
Yeah, the king.
Then you would need a king character,
Maybe a
then
young knight who's like
then you
young and ambitious and you know, hot-headed and
Mhm.
what's the word, like
yeah. So
impulsive, and then you have the wise sage who's trying to teach him, you know, and you got a damsel in distress. You know, that's an archetype. That's one way you can, when you have a type of story and then you mold characters
you have
according to
roles
those
that
roles.
need to be filled. Yeah.
Yeah, the archetype kind of way. Of course, there's also a villain. That's a very important archetype, right? He's kind of there's the word protagonist and antagonist. A lot of times a great villain is a person who stands opposed to the whatever the protagonist stands for, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be a simple thing like this, where it's like the protagonists are just the people who want to steal the axe, and the heroes are just the people who want to get him back. Or the antagonists are the people who want to steal the axe, and the protagonists
Yeah.
want to get them back. That's a very simple example. Of course, it could be more complicated, right? It could be a philosophical thing. You know, I stand for this thing, and this person stands for something else, and you know, and then you get a deeper story.
So
Let's see.
what about like there's when you're coming up with characters, it's important to think about their motivations. So like you know
Right.
you can't just it makes it a lot more interesting to have them actually wanting something that kind of drives the story forwards.
Yeah.
And so like we could talk about these characters' motivations, you know, and like how did you come up with these motivations?
So, Caden is a very simple person. He doesn't really want to do much. You know, he just wants us to live a simple, normal life of being a merchant, or I mean, being a you know, I'm just looking at the merchant there, but of being a herdsman, right? But of course, then you know you don't really get any adventure with that. If you have a character who just wants to live a simple life, it makes for a pretty lousy story. So I wanted to make a situation where he's kind of, you know, forced to do some. You know, he has to grapple with his brother who wants to live a more exciting life. He wants to see adventure and excitement, right? So that's kind of how I came with them both, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, how else would you know he get into you know, how would he get into adventures without someone who draws him into them?
Yeah.
I guess that's how I came with that duel.
And then Oobleck's character kind of offsets all the that conflict, right?
Yeah.
He kind of is more of a character that has like humor and
He's kind of a comic relief side character, I guess you'd say. And you know, he's funny. You need a kind of a funny character.
Yeah.
I kind of think of it as like, you know, we have the funny one, the handsome one, and the cute one. You know, like that's kind of what I'm doing with the three boys. You know, Batar's the handsome one, of course. Like it comes into like how we designed them, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, I wanted Batar to look sophisticated. He got a really fancy fur hat. He's got a shiny silk robe, and he looks chiseled and strong looking and handsome. And Caden's kind of cute and scrappy looking. And
then I
you,
have
I
the
mean,
color
you kind
for
of came
the.
up with the design of Oobleck, right? Primarily.
Hmm.
So like, what goes into designing?
And then I have these colors here for the merchants
Oh,
that
nice.
I don't have them saved
Ah.
because they're not one of the main characters that I'm drawing a lot of times.
Hmm.
So I'm just so what about making your characters believable?
Yeah, that's a really important thing. I think. I think it really comes down to knowing your character, because if
Hmm.
you can understand your character, and you can understand what he does in situations, what he or she does in situations, then the audience likes that better. People
Hmm.
they actually
Well,
like
like
it
predictability.
when it's more predictable. Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, of course, you don't want it to be super predictable. You like surprises and things, but if your character does something that's
Like this,
completely
like
unexpected,
like on this, part when
yeah,
the merchant starts telling Batar that he could travel the world,
yeah,
then you know he has this face like like he's about to leave and then he just stops.
yeah,
That's kind of predictable, and
right.
it kind of you're kind of thinking that that's going to happen.
And of course, Caden's reaction is predictable. He's not like, "Oh, sure, let's travel, let's join them and become, and travel
Yeah.
the world." He doesn't want to do that kind of thing.
So that um
Because people like it when, oh, I know what he's going to do now. He's
Yeah.
gonna when they predict it,
that's interesting.
right?
Hmm.
Uh, for me, I designed Caden. I mean, Caden's character is quite simple. Like
Hmm.
he has very few skills. Like he's good at riding,
Hmm.
shooting, hunting, things like that, tracking animals, of course.
Hmm.
And he's a good boy. He's got a pretty good head on his shoulders. He's not bad, or he's got honest.
Uh-huh.
He's getting there. I mean, he's pretty.
He-
Growth in the character is important, but
Yeah. So
got a pretty good moral compass,
so
I'd say.
there's predictability
Yeah.
and having your characters stay true to character,
Mm-hmm.
but also they shouldn't always be the same. They should change. They should
Yeah.
grow.
Uh-huh.
So how do you? I think
I think this story kind of shows the growth of the characters, right?
Yeah,
Like
we can't really give anything away.
No,
But,
that's true. There's all this stuff I want to say, but I can't really spoil
but-
the story.
But like for a character who
Like think about Captain Haddock in Tintin. I don't know if you ever read Tintin, but there's a lot of character growth in that in him.
mhm.
I mean, it's probably better to talk about a different comic than this one because we don't want to spoil what happens to that. The growth, you'll see what happens. We'll spoil what happens in the story. But Captain Haddock starts with he's just a terrible, drunken sailor who
Mhm.
he has no responsibility, and then eventually he gets better and better, and he becomes more responsible, and
Yeah.
finally he has all Marlin Spike Hall. He's a rich,
Yeah.
society person.
That's
Although-
true. Yeah. And
Some characters don't have a different kind of character development, right?
well, it's also interesting because
Like Sherlock Holmes.
Mhm.
He never changes much his character, but you learn more and more about him. That's another type of character
yeah,
development, where you learn more and more about the character.
there. I think like we were talking about last time. We were talking about coming up with story ideas,
Uh-huh.
but there's tons of different types of stories,
Right.
and a more simple structure,
Mhm.
like I was thinking about like Peanuts comics.
Mhm.
Charlie Brown, he just has a certain character, traits to him. Like he's always kind of
Yeah.
depressed and
Yeah,
um,
and people like that. Him staying true to his character. He
Mhm.
doesn't change all of a sudden and become really bubbly and energetic.
yeah. So
And they like to see how a character like him would react to certain situations. And
yeah, it's like Walby. Walby's a kind of he's not so bright,
right.
and all the situations that he's in, he kind of reacts a certain way to them,
Yeah.
and kind of predictable.
Uh-huh.
And that's part of kind of the next step after you come up with your character.
Yeah.
Actually writing the story and telling the story is really how you all those choices that you make
Yeah.
as you're telling the story.
You have to get to know your character. You have to figure it all out. Like how.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I kind of based it around my characters around people I know, because I know what they would do in situations.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what else we talk about. What about how we designed these characters, like what they wear? I was getting into that a little bit, like
Mm-hmm.
like how, the colors and whatnot, and why did we decide to go with them? Like,
yeah.
Batar's like with Batar, I kind of designed it. Like I decided
Mm-hmm.
what it's going to look like, right? To more
Yeah.
extent. I looked through different looked at different types of Mongolian hats, Mongol, fur hats,
Mm-hmm.
and I found this one, which is like it's a pretty fancy looking one because it's got a lot of fur. It's kind of a big. It looks like a little bit like a Russian fur hat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's got like a shiny. I mean, do you draw it shiny kind of, or I guess you haven't really.
I do. I think I tried to do the
shiny deal.
boots.
Yeah,
shiny.
the boots are shiny. Like he has shinier boots. Caden has simple kind of just brown leather boots, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Caden's got a pretty simple fur hat. It looks just like hide, and then it's kind of sewn in a certain way, and it's kind of like Ublex hat. It's just a simple fur hat, but Batar's is more fancy. It's like this could probably just be Caden's here. Could probably just be like fur, like a like sheepskin or something. Whereas you gotta erase that. Yeah,
See.
that's the line. See over.
I'll figure it out later.
Okay, but so Caden's is probably a simple like sheepskin, sheep hide kind of thing, but Batar's is like fancy, like stoat or weasel or some kind of fancy fur, which you see a lot in the Mongol Empire. They liked fur a lot. You see pictures of like Kublai Khan would wear a whole coat of ermine fur, which is like the really expensive kind of fur in the medieval times.
Is that an animal?
Yeah, it's like the weasel that's kind of white. It's got the white. That what they would do is it's all white and it's got the tail, the black tail. Have you seen that? Like in a medieval.
Maybe.
Like sometimes you'll see a king where it's just a collar of that. It's where they take a bunch of ermines.
Oh, like the speckled looking thing.
The speckled kind of
Yeah.
white and black. Those are like ermine tails.
I see.
They take a bunch of ermines and sew them all together.
Wow.
That's for a king because they can't. That's the only people who can afford. Either a king or a really rich person. They'd have a collar all around like this. And you see that in the Mongol Empire. Like there's pictures of Kublai Khan wearing like a whole coat of ermine. So he was super rich.
Oh yeah, and also if you haven't checked out the excerpt of the comic, there's a link to it in the
11
description
pages.
box below.
Yeah.
The first 11 pages of the story, and that's free to read on the website. And also, as I finish the pages, I post them on Patreon, and you can follow along there if you'd like to be a member of my Patreon there.
Another thing I was thinking about with the design of these characters is like how are the Mongolian clothes different than the Chinese clothes? What's different about them?
Well, we looked at we Google searched the different the merchants, the Chinese merchants, the traditional clothes that they would wear, and I get these are kind of probably more fancy clothes, because the merchants were probably rich,
right? That makes sense.
And
I noticed also like they wear the kind of coat that buttons in the front, whereas the Mongolian deal buttons on the corner here. Right, like it's the shoulder buttoning. I think they probably wore that because they would be riding a lot and the wind would be blowing at them.
Okay.
You need something like the double coat, the double
and
coat.
These merchants have a camel,
right? A Bactrian camel, the 2-hump kind of camel. That's the kind of camel that would live that would be in Siberia. It's the kind that comes from the Gobi Desert, where it's really cold at night. So the camels have fur. Now, how about Ublek? Like, what did you design in the designing of Ublek? How did you decide what kind of clothes you would wear?
Well, he has two different outfits.
Mm-hmm.
He has
Oh, yeah.
the one from this page, or like, the in the early on
Mm-hmm.
in the story
Before it started snowing in the story, right?
yeah, before they go off on their hunt for the yak thieves.
Mm-hmm.
He has a more simple, or he has this,
A vest.
yeah,
That's neat, yeah.
and his pants and boots. He doesn't have a deal, but then on these later pages he has his big coat and his big hat that he wears. Let me pull this page up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is him with the
Neat.
with his
Oh,
cold weather outfit.
Yeah. Kind of a long coat. That's good. Like the fur.
If you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments.
Mm-hmm. So, the first thing you do is you lay down like that background layer, right?
Yeah.
And then there's like a secondary
So-
layer that's the background layer is what's going to be all on the ground, right? Like with the snow, the
Yeah.
floor of the snows. And so then you need a layer for like the
The
background.
stuff in the distance.
Yeah.
And then the trees
Okay.
and the
So is this
The
is here
branches.
over here on these lower half? Is it actually just going to be a blank background?
no. I'll have probably like a gradient of two colors.
Oh, okay, but it'll still be pretty
most of the
simple, right?
area. Yeah, it's these. Yeah, these. The bottom ones are going to be more simple.
Yeah, that's a
but
pretty
they're
common
gonna have the.
comic. I've seen that in comics.
They'll be filled with bubbles, the speech bubbles. So.
Hergé, who makes Tintin, uses that. There's a part where they're like in a jungle, but instead of drawing the green background of the jungle and all the trees and everything, he just puts a green background, right?
Yeah.
To kind of save on time. I
Mhm.
mean, you kind of just kind of, your mind kind of fills in the details, right? You don't really think
Yeah.
about it, but it's interesting when you stop and look at it. Because is that kind of what you're doing here? It's just going to be a gradient. It's not going to have details in the background.
Yeah.
It's neat.
Because it's area that's mostly full of blocked by the bubbles.
Mm-hmm. They also do that on cartoons, if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when they want to focus on a character, they'll just show a blank background in some cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not paying attention to that.
Yeah.
The old cartoons, like in the 20s, since they didn't have sound, they really had to rely on visual stuff, and everything was moving at once. Newer cartoons, you can have scenes of just nothing happening, just a frame and talking. A lot of cartoons utilize that. Wow.
So I'm looking at these horses.
Yeah.
So I have all the colors saved here.
Cool.
Then I'm gonna start coloring these Caden's horse.
Yeah. So I thought a lot about his horse. It's a black colored horse. Its name, and he calls it Timur, which means iron. So I thought that's a good name for a black horse. It's funny, when I was writing this and researching stuff, I came across. So I decided to call Batar's horse Ulan, which means red. So just a red horse. And then I learned that the Mongols didn't name their horses. So it was really disappointing.
And you're trying to be that authentic that you're not even gonna.
That I was kind of disappointed, because
You would
I
have
want to name
not
the
named them.
horses. I was gonna get rid of the names. So I kept reading the article. It said the Mongols didn't name their horses; they just referred to them by their color.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's the color that you named him.
Yeah, I named all the horses by their color. I did that by accident. I didn't even know about this.
Wow.
The practice. Well, I can't tell you how many times that's happened. That's happened so many times where I would research something and it would fit with the story. Yeah, it would work out perfectly. That happens in this story, and then several other. In the next story I'm planning, it happened a bunch of times with that. It's great. It's just confirmed that this was the perfect setting for the story.
So, I'm also working on writing my next Walby book, and it's one that I've been planning for a long time. I've been working on that even longer than Walby's Road Trip Adventure, and it's a story that has a lot of kind of goes back into the history of Walby's grandpa's story, and
The one he inherited the
William
the cottage from?
Brown,
Okay. Yeah.
and then it also kind of has things that happen in it that are kind of point to things that are going to happen later in later Walby stories.
Oh, okay.
So it's just figuring out all the connections, to figure out how the story is going to work out. Took a long time.
Yeah.
And there were parts of it that I couldn't figure out until more recently. Just lots of discussing with me and Josiah, talking about stuff, and so, but now I'm writing out the script for it, and I'm
Nice.
following what we talked about in the last live stream. Josiah talked about the writing method that he used, that he's using, which is could you go over that?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we were talking a little bit about that last time. So what I do is after I kind of write an initial draft, I kind of plan the story out, what's going to happen. I go back and I try to remember all the scenes that are important, because if you don't remember the scene, then it's not important, right? That's kind of my philosophy. Like if you forgot about it and you have to go back and look at your thing to know about it, then I would just say cut that scene out. It's not important. A scene has to serve a purpose. So then I start at the beginning of the book and I write each scene. I just kind of write the thing that happens in that scene, the most important thing.
So
I might write
but
here.
you write like a really general
It'll just
summary
say
of it,
the scene where
they meet the merchants.
Yeah, that'll be this whole page, and the page that we worked on in the last live stream would just be covered under the heading of the scene where they meet the merchants. The scene afterwards where they talk, and I do that for the whole book. And then
so what that helps with that.
the
So
one
that's-
great thing about it is you actually go through the whole book, which is a great feeling of you got through the whole book.
Yeah, so then you know that you can finish it,
Right.
because that's really important.
And you know how many scenes there are.
And that's what has really helped me with this project, was once I got all the pages drafted out. Wait, is this clipboard? Could you get that clipboard? Let me see if this has the pages.
Oh, did you do it for that?
Oh, maybe it's not in here.
Oh, it's probably.
I'm
in
not
here.
sure. I'm not sure where it is.
Uh-huh.
But anyways, I can show them on. I can show some on here. So I took the script from Josiah, and then I drafted it all out just on paper, and I'll show you.
So this is the completed script with the writing and the text and the dialogue already, right? So this is the whole. When I finish my process, I hand it to Joshua, and he then takes it and interprets it into a comic, right? I let him, make a lot of choices with it because.
Well, okay, let's see this.
Can't you just flip it? You have to rotate it so slowly.
Yeah.
Oh.
But anyways, see this is like later in the story.
Okay.
But anyways, we have the whole story drafted out.
Yeah.
And once I did that, it helped me to be able to just push through pages and finish them faster, because I know, that the goal is reachable.
Yeah.
To get to the end of it, and it helped me work on pages a lot faster. That kind of
Yeah.
it helps you know that you're able to get to the end.
Well, we should talk about it in order because you're kind of skipping ahead. So I was talking about writing the heading of each chapter,
Mm.
and then I write everything that happens in the scene, basically all the important points.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the boys, attack the merchants. Well, they don't attack them, but they
Mm-hmm.
surround the merchants. Batar looks at the pile of fur.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I don't really write. I sometimes I just write like he says this thing. He says some stuff. He talks about blah 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 whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and the merchants say talk about this, and then I don't write the conversation. I just kind of write. If I just write like what they talk about. They talk about this for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and then they leave, and then they do this, and they do that. And then I go to the next scene. I write under that heading. I write all the other things that happen in the next scene.
Yeah.
And then I go through the whole book and do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then after I do that, I take a whole different document and start to write the like the actual conversations.
Mm. So
One good thing about
that's when you actually get to the script.
yes, then it's actually the script.
That's what the text that's in the bubbles.
Yeah, and also I write things to Joshua that to describe what's going to happen, what it should look like. I don't like to put a lot of detail. I like to let him plan stuff. Like I don't say I want trees here and this and this, and I want them standing in this certain way.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of let him plan that, unless there's something really important.
Mm-hmm.
I don't go out of my way to mention it, because
So-
usually it turns out better than how I thought it could look. Because I'm not as good as thinking about visual things. So I usually just leave that up to him, right? You make a lot of the choices
Mm-hmm.
here, right? Like, should we see what I wrote? I might and how you interpreted it.
Oh yeah, you could
Yeah, I can find
pull that up probably.
Of course, since I'm just writing it to Joshua, I don't work really hard on describing it. I don't make it really poetical,
Mm-hmm.
so it just sounds like garbage.
I mean, it's good enough for me to,
Mm-hmm.
To come up with something in my imagination.
Yeah.
But
I kind of think of it as writing a movie script.
mm-hmm.
And then Joshua, he plans moments that he wants to capture, right? Like, so imagine it as a continuous thing, and then you like
Mm-hmm.
look at moments of it, right?
But I wonder if we should talk about the so we talked about designing the Caden characters
Yeah.
and
Well, I look at this. We should talk a little bit about like making your
I forgot to
characters
mention
believable.
I forgot to mention the
That's one important thing.
the next and then there's all kinds of stuff with like I could talk a little bit more about how I came up with like the designs for these characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like we definitely went through different lots of different designs for these characters to refine them and stuff.
Yeah.
We could show stuff.
Oh, that's right.
I could show
some of the sketches, right?
Yeah. So, let's see. Here's a drawing of Batar. This is kind of the design we settled upon, where we figured out that he has the belt
Yeah.
and the.
Yeah.
It still has, it's come a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
a little ways from here because the eyes are not exactly right because they should be more, not so.
Are they bigger than they are in this comic? Those eyes seem bigger.
Maybe. But yeah, so yeah, we can see some different versions of the characters that we did. So on this drawing, we figured out that we wanted him to have the belt instead of a sash,
Yeah.
and then we wanted him to have this
Kind
kind
of
of
belt buckle.
hair that's
Yeah.
like pulled back into a little, some kind of
It's like braided, but with a really tight braid, and it
with,
sticks out.
yeah. So that's one of the Mongol haircuts.
Yeah.
And then, let me look at another.
You have more pictures of him?
Yeah, I'll find another character design to look at. I think there's some of Caden that we did. Yeah, so there's this Caden. These are some different Caden drawings that I did early on, and he definitely changed from this one.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, obviously, you can see that we decided not to do a white deal. The robe that they wear is called a deal. So we've just been using that word a lot, but
yeah. I guess we planned for him to have that hat originally.
Yeah. I like that hat. It's kind of simple. You know, you don't get tired of it. It just looks simple, and you don't.
But like,
I think for a main character, it should look pretty. He should look pretty simple.
Yeah.
Since you're gonna see him a lot, you don't want a lot of bells and whistles.
So like, like over here, in this picture, this is kind of what he looks like now.
Yeah.
I kind of, the more I drew him, the more I settled into a certain a certain design for him, and that's kind of the same thing with writing. It's kind of like with writing, the more you write the character, the more you'll get to know the character, and then you'll settle into a certain way they should talk, and
you'll just think about sentences in terms of how they say it.
You have to kind of think in their mindset.
Yeah. Like,
and then
like Hayden wouldn't use big fancy words like, and Batar, he's smarter. He talk, and also he did with Batar. I decided to have him. He doesn't talk much. He just kind of. Well, he doesn't use long words. He's not long-winded. He just kind of gruff and to the point.
Also, he would be more of a commander.
Yeah.
A leader.
Because he can just speak. He just says something. He just tells people what to do and they do it. He doesn't need to do a lot of convincing. He just kind of.
So and then.
Barks out the orders.
Yeah. Let's see.
And Oobleck, when he says things, it sounds very wise, right? That's kind of how we write him. We make him sound.
Let me get back to this one. Yeah. So, but like for the main character, you want to make someone who you can kind of just put yourself in their place.
Well, yeah, that's what that's what I'm doing. I want to make someone who isn't really super skilled.
That's why he's
easy to understand.
He doesn't have any he's a really simple character.
Like what you Tintin. See is what you get. There's nothing. There's no hidden layers to him. There's no hidden. There's not some secret skill that he knows about that you can't.
And the design of the character, his face is very simple. Just normal eyes. No confusing features to him.
Yeah.
Like Tintin, he's very simple.
I mean, a main character doesn't have to be like that. You could have a main character as mysterious too. But we decided to go with this because I think it, people can relate to him.
Yeah, for this type of story. Let me see if there are any other designs. Because I also have a video in the description about designing characters, and so you should check that out and that's about what we talked about at first with the motivations.
Yeah.
And the personalities that the characters have, and how to come up with what your characters look like based on their personality.
Yeah.
And so check that out in the description box below.
We could talk about we could hear about the motivations of our characters. I guess we did talk about that already. Yeah. Right? We talked about.
And then, let me pull up another drawing of the.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Friends. Yeah, this was some early drawings.
Yeah.
Of them.
I think this is where we kind of got it right. We finally settled on the facial features of all the characters.
These were characters that Josiah had, in his story that he's had planned for a long time, and then recently when we decided to make the comic out of it, we worked together on different designs for characters, and it was around last December, I think, was when we were working on it, and it was a pretty quick process, right? Just designing them,
I think
but then
the
as
big moment, the moment that when we, came to what decided what the characters would look like is it when you were able to draw kind of like what I imagined they would look like,
mm,
and that was
mm-hmm,
a big turning point, right?
mm-hmm,
Because it's like that's the character that I had in my head, but I couldn't draw it, and the Joshua could draw it. 'Cause
mm,
it took like a lot of describing and like explaining. No, make this, make his
mm-hmm.
like make Batar's jawline higher, make his, and then we finally got
So this is,
to that.
let's see.
Oh yeah, and then one thing. Oh, this is this with where you were saying like I want them to be iconic. I want them to be kind of logo. Like if you draw like
Yeah,
this is not what
so
they're gonna look like, right? But this is like a logo almost, right? Like
yeah, these are like the most simplified version of them,
yeah, the
and
essence kind of boils
because
down.
what
I think that's
yeah.
important, right? To have a character who looks iconic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's if you can boil them down to just icons,
Mm-hmm.
then you can really, that means you can really understand like how to draw them
Yeah.
and how to make them look distinct from each other. Because
Right.
if you boil them down to icons and they all look the same, then you have a problem with
Yeah.
drawing your characters and making
Yeah,
them look
'cause-
distinct from
'cause
each
then
other.
The differences are only superficial.
Mm-hmm.
Like you need a core difference, like in
Yeah.
their shape. This comes
Uh-huh.
down to their shape, right? Like how different
Yeah.
they are.
So these two characters are going to be later on in the story.
Mhm.
We have Chaikal coming up in a few pages,
Yeah.
and then this girl is the girl that is the colonel's daughter, who is in a few pages earlier on.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so their shape. Let's talk about. So you can talk about their shape. Like Batar's shape is like diamond headed, kind of,
Mhm.
right? He's got high cheekbones,
Mhm.
and his eyes don't go deep. Like they're not deep set
Mhm.
in his head.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like how do you describe that? Like, oh, he doesn't
Yeah,
have
they're
a wide
more
forehead.
flat on the front of his face.
Right.
Yeah. So
But Caden has like just a grape. What's that shape? Just an oval, simple oval.
mhm.
He's got his eyes are kind of wide apart.
Mhm.
And he has a deeper forehead. His eyes are deeper in his forehead,
Mm.
or wide, not like he has his protruding forehead is a little more protruding out,
Mhm.
and then he has a bigger nose.
Mm. Yeah.
Like his nose doesn't point up, but it's pointed. It's kind of bigger. It points out. Like Batar has a flat nose, so does Ublek.
Mhm.
Ublek
So,
of course has a round
I
head.
colored all the characters.
Nice.
I think we'll wrap it up now.
Yeah.
I
That
hope
was good.
it was showing some error message. I hope
For
the
a
live
second.
stream went okay. But
Is it clear? Can everyone hear us well? And is it choppy or anything? Just wondering.
but yeah, next. So yeah, well, I'll we'll go over to the
Yeah.
this view now.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you for joining, everyone. I hope there was you were able to watch it okay, and it was a interesting discussion about about characters. It helped to come up with the thinking about this.
Uh-huh.
Helps both the coming up with characters and also the design of the characters.
Mhm.
It was good to think about that again.
Yeah.
So as I work on my my Walby book that I'm
Yeah.
writing, so now, oh yeah, I also want to mention our next live stream on the 22nd. We have a special guest live stream coming up. Luke Murray is an artist that I really love his art a lot, and I'm really excited about having him on the live stream. We're going to be talking about his project, and he's going to be showing us some of the projects that he's working on, and we're really excited to
Yeah.
have a discussion with him. and he's going to be showing us some of his wood cutting project,
Yep.
printmaking project that he's working on. So thank you everyone for joining. Make sure to
Hope you enjoyed.
check out the links in the description box below.
Oh, and also, of course, put your, and again, we should mention the
The newsletter.
email
Yeah, sign up for the newsletter, and we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.